And could you point him out to the court, please?
Dare.
Let the record show that the witness has identified the defendant.
Your witness, Mr. Goodman.
So, you were working at the Sandia Mart the night of the 30th. A man came in, and he reached across the counter, and he grabbed up the money from my register.
It's him.
Are you sure that's the person?
That's him.
Now, would you be surprised to learn, Mr. Harkness, that the person you just pointed to is not the defendant? My client is in the back of the courtroom. The person you ID'd is named Hollis Early. He's a bartender down in Berlin. You didn't recognize him either, Your Honor.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. In this episode, we're going to dive into one of the orders that the judge just ruled on in the Lemony saga, and that is on one of the only pieces of actual evidence in the case. And you know, I go through that funnel all the time, and I talk about the ridiculously circumstantial evidence that doesn't prove anything whatsoever. And some people confuse what I'm describing when I say circumstantial evidence, because technically things like fingerprints are circumstantial evidence. But no, when I'm talking about circumstantial evidence, I'm talking about things that have absolutely nothing to do with proving that Bryan Kohberger was in the King Road house, in the neighborhood, anywhere near the crimes or participating in the crimes the night of the atrocity. There's only a couple of things that law enforcement will try to present that is actual evidence, such as the vehicle that they can't identify that looks similar to his vehicle in the neighborhood, such as the eyewitness identification. And that's about it, because even the cast information does not put Bryan Kohberger anywhere near the King Road neighborhood. So the only two pieces of actual evidence that puts him in the neighborhood is eyewitness identification, the vehicle identification that's non-existent, and that miraculous DNA on a movable object that was found at the crime scene. So in this one, we're going to discuss one of those pieces, and that is the eyewitness identification by Miss DM, specifically what the defense was asking to be limited, which was the description of the defendant having bushy eyebrows, or the assailant having bushy eyebrows. Now, I'll start out by saying I believe that it is actually okay for the judge to rule in this manner that he ruled, because of one thing and one thing only. Even though as we get into this, we're going to see all the inconsistencies and the fact that this didn't come up until the third police interview, and the fact that, you know, she had drawings all over her walls of bushy eyebrows. But if you think about it, because the description did come out in an interview that was only, I believe it says 17th, so 4 days after the atrocity, well, that was still a long time before they ever had Bryan Kohberger as a suspect. So the fact that Bryan Kohberger happens to have full eyebrows is really just a stroke of luck for the prosecution, in my opinion. Because let's face it, if Bryan Kohberger didn't have any eyebrows, then law enforcement would have just ignored the statements of bushy eyebrows, as it would be to them irrelevant at that point. And they would be pointing to the bushy eyebrows drawn on the wall as why she described the suspect like that. Much like I seen in the Delphi case, where they took composite drawings of the suspect and then excluded them from trial because they didn't match Richard Allen. So the ability for law enforcement to manipulate things on the back end is always apparent, but if something almost fits, you can bet they're going to leave it in there and they're going to push it hard. So the bushy eyebrows thing, I think if you were to suggests somebody had bushy eyebrows and then you focus in on their eyebrows, most men out there, especially with dark hair, you're going to find would be considered to have bushy eyebrows when you do that. But with all that being said, we're still going to break this one down, and we're going to look at some of the other inconsistencies that we see. And I believe all these inconsistencies are going to go a long way to discrediting this witness, even though I know the witness is going to be discredited because she wasn't there. She left, came back right at 4:19. Showed it to you on video. Nobody's going to dissuade me from that perspective after everything that I've looked at on this. But until then, though, we're going to focus in just strictly on what the law enforcement is presenting as facts as it relates to this subject, and we're going to look at it in a non-biased view and see what we can discern. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so we're going to go through the judge's ruling here on the witness identification by bushy eyebrows, but I'm going to point out some things that are very, very, it's very telling because they're so inconsistent. And the ultimate conclusion of the judge here is to exclude or to include her ability to describe the person she saw had bushy eyebrows, but he also basically just spells it out that, this is a matter that can be handled by cross-examination. So Ann Taylor is going to get to cross-examine her, and I don't see how this can help the state's case in any way, especially when we go through here and start looking at these inconsistencies. But it starts with DM, a roommate of the victims in this case, was the sole eyewitness. So Bethany never seen anything. She only is going to testify to things that Dylan told her. And that's smart for her because, she was never there. And I thought this was interesting because I put together that video yesterday using those Steve G texts. I just happened to go through some of Brat Norton's screenshots and seen this one where somebody stated, Bethany wasn't there that night. I know that for a fact. And that's not evidence, but it certainly is interesting. The sole witness to the intruder believed to have carried out the unalivings at 1122 King Road. During her interviews with law enforcement and at the preliminary hearing in this matter, What do you mean preliminary hearing in this matter? Now, this guy's the judge, and he doesn't know that there was no preliminary hearing that took place in the Bryan Kohberger case? Surely he knows that in lieu of the preliminary hearing they were supposed to have, that they scrapped it, did a secret grand jury indictment, and therefore railroaded Kohberger long ago. But yet he puts in his document that at the preliminary hearing in this matter, now, Judge, that was at a secret grand jury indictment. DM described the intruder at having bushy eyebrows. Now, I know this judge better never get on to the prosecution or the defense about grammatical errors and getting stuff wrong, because in one sentence, he's called a grand jury indictment a preliminary hearing, and he's described the intruder at having bushy eyebrows. Give me a break. Defendant moves in limine to exclude any evidence at trial referencing bushy eyebrows. Well, he did not rule in favor of that. The court concludes DM's description of the suspect's eyebrows is admissible. He goes on to say it real quick. But then we get into the facts that he's going to say are facts. On November 13th, 2022, sometime, I love how they do this, sometime before 4:19 a.m. Now, the judge, because he has looked at all the evidence in this case, he knows the timeline that law enforcement gave of 4 to 4:25 can't be right. So instead of writing between 4 and 4:19, he's adjusting his language based on his understanding instead of what the prosecution is stating is the record. So that's kind of BS right there, in my opinion. And he just makes it generally sometime before 4:19. Yeah. DM observed a person inside her residence, which she shared with her 4 roommates at 1122 King Road. DM placed several phone calls and sent several text messages to her roommates. The only roommate who responded was BF, and I love the way he words this, who resided in a downstairs bedroom. Well, how about you, instead of saying they resided down there, why didn't you say BF, who was in a downstairs bedroom at the time? No, this is the only mention of BF in this whole thing. Now it's just she resided downstairs and no mention of her being in the house. That's fishy to me. They had 2 short phone conversations and exchanged text. Within those phone calls and text messages, DM relayed to BF that she saw a person in the residence wearing black and he had on a ski mask that covered his forehead and mouth. The same day at approximately 11:56, a bogus 911 call was placed from 1122 King Road for a reported unresponsive female. Moscow Police Department responded to the scene, and Officer Mitch Nunez took a statement from DM. She told Officer Nunez she saw a male, not insanely tall, wearing all black, and a mask that was just covering his forehead and mouth. Later, DM repeated the description. He was a little bit taller than me, couldn't really see much of him. I'm almost positive he was wearing a full black outfit. And he had this mask that was just over his forehead and over his mouth. DM gave the description a third time, repeating he had a mask. He was an inch or 2 taller than her. He was basketball player kind of skinny, and a voice she did not recognize. DM also told Detective Nunez she was kind of in and out of it because I was so scared. And I was really tired. She did not mention anything during that interview about the intruder's eyebrows. Nor, according to what the judge has laid out here, did she mention anything about what time all this occurred, and nor did she mention anything about her being drunk. Just she was really tired and she was scared. So basically the timing of the event, bushy eyebrows, her drinking, all that didn't come out in the first 2 interviews. None of that came out apparently till the 3rd interview. At approximately 1:47 that same day, DM was interviewed at the Moscow Police Department by Detective Lawrence Mowry. During this interview, DM reported she saw a white male. She did not know, maybe my height, a few inches taller, skinny, athletic built, wearing all black, wearing this mask that covers his forehead and here. And regarding his height, she reported, I'm 5'10", so he's probably around 6 foot. She responded no when asked if she saw what color his eyebrows were, and added, I don't remember what his eyes looked like either, but she saw his eyes, and he was definitely a white guy. She mentioned again she was in and out of it because she was tired, and explained everything was kind of blurry. I fully don't remember it, I would say. So again, she didn't mention the eyebrows, she didn't mention any times, and she never mentioned that she was drunk. But 4 days later, she was interviewed by Idaho State Police Detective Victoria Gooch and MPD Captain Dustin Blaker. DM gave a detailed recounting of what she did on Saturday, November 12th, until she went to bed at approximately 3:20 a.m. Well, now she went to sleep at 3:20 on Sunday, and November 13th, 2022. She stated that sometime between 4 and 4:20, so it wasn't until this 3rd interview several days later that now she's going to start entering this timeline. Now, you can bet they've gone through the phone at this point, and they've tried to start setting this timeline because they actually started setting it on that 911 call. But she went to bed at 3:20. This is only contradicted by the contact she created in her phone, but also this is the first mention of any times. So other than that 911 call when she says, at 4 a.m., so that's I believe, law enforcement trying to keep her consistent with this timeline that they're trying to create. She woke up, heard a male's voice she did not recognize say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Now, this is the first time we see that she's made this statement as well. So the first interviews, she didn't have this. So it's okay, I'm going to help you comes up now. I mean, you can bet this is something that the police actually have said to her after they, got to them that morning. So she's just injecting something she heard later that morning into her story. And that's why I think the Steve G text actually lays out that he said the account of DM is mixed up with two different events. One event is what actually happened. The other event is what happened when the law enforcement and fire people all got there, I believe. She said at the time she was out of it and probably still tipsy, and I believe was also very drunk. So this is the first time that she's even admitted that she had been drinking and was tipsy. And she opened her door and saw someone explaining. And I don't know how I knew it was someone, because from my mind, it's like I was almost wearing these like blurry glasses. Like it's fuzzy and cloudy, but it was like a figure of someone wearing all black. And it was like they had a ski mask that was covering their forehead and their chin and mouth, but I could see all I remember was seeing their eyebrows. And I don't remember what their eyes look like, but I remember their eyebrows. I don't remember the color the eyebrows were. I just remember like bushy eyebrows. That's all I could think about. So this was a shot in the dark right here. And it just turned out that, most men, especially young men, especially if they have darker colored hair, are going to have what you would consider to be a bushy eyebrow. So they're just leaving that in there because it's a shot in the dark that happened to hit. But you can bet, like I said, if Kohberger didn't have any eyebrows, then they would say that, well, she was tipsy and this eyebrow statement doesn't really apply because of that. DM described the male as skinny tone, that basketball kind of type. She stated she was 5'10" tall, so she thought the male was around 5'10" and then 6 foot, somewhere around there. DM stated the male was approximately 3 feet from her where she was standing, but added that could be off because I obviously probably still a little bit drunk. I just woke up. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You woke up at 3:51. I don't remember fully, she reiterated. I know he looked at me because I could see his eyebrows. I think I just saw one eyebrow. I don't know why or how. DM then recounted calling and texting a roommate BF that there was someone in the house wearing all black and a ski mask. And then they continue on with that. But we're going to skip down here to where it gets a little bit more interesting. On November 13th and November 19th, law enforcement took photos of DM's bedroom. On the wall were many magazine photos and drawn pictures pinned to corkboards. The drawings were of human faces with an emphasis on eyes and eyebrows. Some of the eyebrows are heavy. So that's where the eyebrows came from. The fact that Kohberger has full eyebrows is just a very, very sharp coincidence for the prosecution in this case. On December 1st, 2022, 18 days after her first interview, DM was interviewed by forensic interviewer Aaron Williamson. DM gave a detailed accounting of her day on Saturday, November 12, 2022, until she went to bed on Sunday. And she reported she heard a man's voice, and it wasn't Ethan's. It was like, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." And again, I put this as the first time this is mentioned, but actually this is the second time this is mentioned. And let's just go down a little bit here. She also indicated that when she first saw the intruder, she thought he might be a fireman. Again, this is her recounting events that happened the next day. Because let's face it, if she is 3 feet away from a guy staring at her, wait a minute, let's just think about this for a second. And how could it possibly even be in the realm of possibility? Okay, so their only witness in the case, and they're trying to rely on her testimony, is saying that she is getting a ninja dressed in all black wearing a balaclava confused with a fireman. I don't think there's enough alcohol in the entire world that you could drink where you're going to confuse a ninja with a fireman. And this is what we're relying on to send a man to the death penalty. And that's your one piece of eyewitness testimony. Are you freaking kidding me? And they asked DM whether she had seen a picture of defendant. She stated she had seen the mugshot, but had no clue whether defendant was the person she saw in her house. So she can't ID Bryan Kohberger in any way. And then this is interesting. When asked whether she told BF the male had a big nose, what? When she told BF the male had a big nose, DM stated, all I remember, but I don't remember big nose at all, like at all. So apparently she told BF that the guy had a big nose, but she don't remember that big nose like at all. That's like, all I remember is like some bushy eyebrow in all black and some sort of mask, but it wasn't like one of those circle ski masks. That's all I remember. So apparently whoever she saw, she told BF he had a big nose. On May 15th, 2023, now this is where she goes in front of that grand jury judge, not preliminary hearing. DM testified at the grand jury proceeding for the above titled matter regarding November 13th, 2022. Let's see what she told the grand jury. DM testified she woke up around 4 a.m. Yeah, they've ingrained that time into her brain to noises. Okay, well then why were you creating a contact at 3:51? She's toast. She testified she opened her door and heard a man's voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Yep, no, that was the officers the next morning. And I didn't know who the man's voice was. DM testified she opened her door again, saw a figure in all black, which I believe was a person. Whoa. I knew the person was white. I don't know how, but I just knew it. Well, that makes me think that the person may have been black if she's stating she knew the person was white, because she seems to be giving the opposite of the testimony of the truth in this. Knew it was a male. I think I knew that because of the voice. The person was around my height or a few inches taller, and then I knew his build wasn't like scrawny, and he wasn't fat, so I figured it was like the basketball toned lean build, because that's the difference between scrawny and fat, is basketball toned lean build. Regarding what the person was wearing, DM testified there was like, from what I think I remember, it was like a black mask, almost like a ski mask, but not. It just like covered the head. And then maybe up to the mouth, maybe more. I can't remember if it covered just the chin, the mouth, or the nose, or lower. So I can't remember if it was on his face at all. She said his clothing was all black. DM also testified, well, the thing I can really remember was something about a bushy eyebrow. I don't remember seeing anything else, just something about a bushy eyebrow. This is their eyewitness testimony. And the rest is the judge's opinion on the matter, and give me a break. He even goes further. There's nothing confusing about her testimony. Her descriptions of the bushy eyebrows have been consistent and clear. Wow, really, Judge? While she could not provide enough details for a composite sketch, it's unsurprising given her observation that the intruder was wearing a mask over his face. So give me a break. If she can't do a composite sketch and she thinks that she saw something about a eyebrow, and she doesn't remember telling Bethany that, he had a big nose, and everything she says actually relates more to what happened after the fact, how can you possibly let this testimony in? But like I said in the beginning, he's letting it in because the bushy eyebrows statements all came before Bryan was a suspect in the case. So the fact that Bryan has full eyebrows is just a point that the law enforcement and prosecution have jumped on because it's consistent with Bryan. If Bryan had no eyebrows, I assure you they would explain away her bushy eyebrow statements as well. It was just something that she was used to doing, as you see on the sketches on her wall. They simply make the facts fit what they want them to fit. And if they don't fit, well, they'll come up with a good story of why they shouldn't take those into consideration. It's an all-win, no-lose situation for the prosecution's case in everything we see in this case. So it's clear, it should be clear in everybody's mind what this case is all about. The only 3 real pieces of evidence, the DNA on the knife sheath, but then again, to take that into account, you have to ignore the DNA in blood on the rail and in blood on the gloves, and the other DNA that we haven't heard about because there's 3 unknown male DNAs that the defense brought up in the beginning. And then you have to say that the DNA under Maddie's fingernails is just from her lifestyle, not from, an attack from an assailant like every other case in the world would consider to be the best evidence you can have of the assailant. So you have to ignore all that. And then you go to, the car, which it's similar to his car. We can't identify exactly what kind of car it is, but then again, we can't identify that it's his car either, but it's similar to his car. And, the eyewitness, she made statements that generally meet the description of the defendant and half the other male population in the world. And his phone, we got him there. We don't actually have him there. We can't put him, within 20 miles of the crime scene, but he could have been there. But look at all this other stuff we got that happened, 8 months before that. So, that really proves our case. Don't look at that stuff. Let's focus in on all this other stuff. That's the case against Bryan Kohberger. Give me a break. We're going to tear this thing apart, and I can't wait till the defense tears it apart at trial. It's going to be epic. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. And until next time, Pavarotti is out.
In strength now I'm the